Wednesday, February 22nd, 2017, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So I want to talk about Alan Greenspan today. He's been in the news. For example, there's an article on valuewalk.com and it says, Alan Greenspan is now a gold bug, ? Say what? Well, Alan Greenspan, of course, was the chairman of the Federal Reserve from 1987 to 2006. So almost 20 years as chairman. He was, his nickname was the Maestro because, you know, at the time people thought he could do nothing wrong and the economy was doing well. In the 90s, the dot-com boom, the so-called productivity miracle of the 90s, and also the fact that they were able to save, like Mexico when it collapsed in the, the tequila crisis. He came to the rescue with Robert Rubin. They're supposed to be, saviors of the world. And he had this mystique. And he also, of course, prior to becoming, working in government in the 60s, was a disciple of Ayn Rand, who's a, objectivist. She espoused, free markets, the individual, the gold standard. And he wrote an essay in 1966 called Gold and Economic Freedom. And he was a gold bug back then, and a lot of people felt that he betrayed gold bugs and the gold standard by, becoming chairman of the Federal Reserve, which is the biggest, fiat money factory, so to speak, for the last 100 years, which is, the antitheses of a gold bug, of a gold standard. So why am I talking about Alan Greenspan? Yeah, I mean, I have been critical of Alan Greenspan in the past. His 1966 essay, helped me understand a lot about the gold standard and what gold really means. And I quote here from this article, and it says, and this is Alan Greenspan, under a gold standard, the amount of credit that an economy can support is determined by the economy's tangible assets, since every credit instrument is ultimately a claim on some tangible asset. But government bonds are not backed by tangible assets, by tangible wealth, only by the government's promise to pay out of future tax revenues, and cannot be easily absorbed by the financial markets. A large volume of new government bonds can be sold to the public only at progressively higher interest rates. Thus, government deficit spending under a gold standard is severely limited. The abandonment of the gold standard made it possible for the welfare statists to use the banking system as a means to an unlimited expansion of credit. And that's all true. And the other side of the coin, though, is that the banking system has benefited from this. And the banking system, the financialization of the system is bought up, controls all the big corporations, controls education through the endowment of universities, and they peddle this system now. And Alan Greenspan warned us in 1966 about it. And you might say, well, why did he become, chairman of the Federal Reserve? Yeah, of course, before that, I think he was worked for the Ford government, Gerald Ford. He was the head of the he was the counselor for economic advice. He had economic advice in the White House. So he was quite prominent, but he didn't become as prominent until he became Fed chairman. I don't think many people knew about Alan Greenspan, the general public at least, before he became chairman, before he became the maestro, and before, he saved the, don't forget the 1987 crash was just after he took over. He dealt with that quite well, I guess. And the market went on to make new highs after that, 2 years or so after it. And one thing I like to, it's kind of an inside scoop that I have about Alan Greenspan. And how did I come about that? Well, back in 2002, when I'd just been following the Austrian school for a year or two through the Mises.org website. I really got into that, and I decided to go to the Mises Institute 20th anniversary. I think it was sometime in October or so at the Mises Institute in Auburn, Alabama. So I convinced my wife to come with me. So we went to the States for this. It was a long weekend. They had seminars, famous economists, Austrian economists that is, luncheons, dinners. It was really enjoyable. You could tour that little institute, the bookstore. And Auburn, Alabama, I mean, that's a small, not a very big place. Not much to see there. There's a big university there, but I think at the time, I think it was I'm not sure. I forgot the exact time we were there. But anyway, Ron Paul happened to come for the weekend to the Mises Institute 20th anniversary. And he sat in some of the lectures. You could choose what lecture you went to. And I was in the same lecture that Ron Paul was, one of the lectures. And at the end of the lecture, I went up to him to ask him about Greenspan. And because he had told us in one of the speeches he gave that Alan Greenspan had signed this essay, 1966 essay for him, in Congress when they're having their, when they had their, hearings. And he went up to Greenspan and he said, could you please sign this essay to me? And he asked Greenspan, do you still believe in everything you wrote in 1966? And Greenspan said, yes, I wouldn't change one bit. I still believe in all of that. And he told Ron Paul the reason, the problem is that the public, they don't want a gold standard. They want, the welfare state. They want the big government. So, he had to play the game, I guess, by becoming chairman of the Federal Reserve. You might say, well, he was a traitor to the movement. But actually, thinking about it now, if he hadn't become chairman of the Federal Reserve and a famous, rock star, so to speak, central banker in the 90s, before Greenspan, no one really cared about central bankers that much. Well, if he hadn't done that, we wouldn't even probably have heard of Alan Greenspan. And if he came out today and said, I still believe in the gold standard, people would have said, who are you? So in a way, I can't read the man's mind, but he might have done, more of a service by becoming chairman of the Federal Reserve and perpetuating the fiat money system. And then, after retiring, coming out and saying he still believes in the gold standard. He's so famous and, people know about Alan Greenspan that coming out now and saying he still believes in it, might have much more of an impact. And because in a recent statement, according to this Value Walk article, he says, investment in gold is in gold now is insurance. It's not for the short-term gain, but for long-term protection. Today, going back onto the gold standard would be perceived as an act of desperation. But if the gold standard were in place today, we would not have reached the situation in which we now find ourselves. So what I'm trying to say here is that even if he hadn't become chairman of the Federal Reserve, someone else would have become, and we probably, would have had the same thing happened in the last 30 years, the financialization of the economy. They would have found someone else to do it. So by him having done it and still being a gold bug, maybe that's a good thing. These things don't change overnight, The only way we're going to go back on a more sound money, honest monetary system is when this system that we're in fails and collapses, and people are asking for, looking for answers and like trying to solve the problem, coming up with a new system. And yeah, the system we're in is not sustainable, not mathematically, not politically and socially. You can see now the political uncertainty in the Western world, in my opinion, is a consequence of, this fiat monetary system coming, being right at the unsustainable level. So yeah, that's it. I think Alan Greenspan, I'm not trying to, be an apologist for him. I'm just saying maybe he did the right thing by becoming chairman of the Federal Reserve, becoming very prominent and known by the whole world, and then and still calling for a gold standard. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share it far and wide. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. If you'd like to donate to my channel, there's some links below in the description. I accept BitGold, Bitcoin. I've got a PayPal and a Patreon account. Take care. Bye.